February 12th, Kettle Hills Board of Commissioners meeting. We will call our meeting to order. And if you would please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And if you would also join us for a moment of silence, please. Thank you. Next up is our agenda approval.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion or comments? All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, we'll move on then to the first time set aside this evening for public comment. This is an opportunity for anyone who wishes to bring anything forward to the board to speak. We just ask that you go to the podium and identify yourself by name and address, please. Do we have anyone's? Okay, we didn't have anyone sign up, no problem. If you still would like to speak, just raise your hand and we'll call you. Is there anyone who wants to speak at this public comment time? No takers? Okay, there is another time set aside at the end of the agenda. You're welcome to speak then if you wish to. So, all right, we will move on then to introductions and presentations, and I'd like to welcome Karen Brown, the Director of the Chamber of Commerce. She's here with us this evening to share a presentation on the Community Housing Initiative.
I also have Pat Room, our chair-elect, is going to do the presentation.
Welcome. Okay, great. Thank you for being here.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you for inviting us to address you tonight. My name is Pat Broom. I own Phoenix Restoration, which is a Kill Devil Hills corporation. I live in Kill Devil Hills, and I'm also a member of the board of the Chamber of Commerce. I'm here with Karen Brown, the president of the Chamber, as you just heard. We want to talk to you tonight about community housing. This issue has been identified as one of, if not the most critical issue facing our business community today. And I think it faces our entire community, not just the business community. We've picked the term Community Housing Initiative because we're trying to be very comprehensive in our approach. This isn't student summer housing or retirement housing or permanent workforce housing. It's all of the above. It's what's missing in the package of what we have available today that's required by our community. We call this the Community Housing Initiative. Who are the members of this initiative? It was formed by the Chamber of Commerce. We really sponsored it to try and be a facilitator to bringing a collaboration of all the stakeholders involved in this issue to the table. We have listed on this slide many of the groups who have members involved on our committee. We are attempting here to not only include the stakeholders who are affected by the issue, but also the stakeholders that have the resources to help us address the issue. So we're trying to get kind of a community-wide discussion of what's the problem we're trying to solve and who's got stuff they can bring to the table to solve it. We did a survey of our businesses. We've been hearing anecdotally for quite some time that this is a very severe issue. But before we came to you and other towns in the counties and kind of made a big effort out of this, we decided we better try and get some facts behind what we're hearing. So we did a survey of our business members, and of those who responded, over 75% identified workforce challenges that were very specifically related to housing. And several of the types of workforce housing challenges that they mentioned were on these slides. Definitely year-round housing is an issue. Seasonal housing we know is an issue. We find members and people have reported inability to fill professional positions, service positions. Anecdotally, a couple of the comments that we got from our board members and people who responded to the survey. The Outer Banks Home Builders Association has been working for some time with the College of the Albemarle to try and get them to provide a trade services curriculum at the Dare County branch. The average age of an HVAC contractor on the Outer Banks today is 56. we're gonna be in trouble in a few years when they're all retiring and we're not backfilling with younger contractors. I suspect that something very similar is true among the plumbers and electricians and builders, for that matter. So after much work with COA, they had developed a curriculum. They were bringing it to the Dare County campus. They had hired 2 instructors to teach it. And last summer, those 2 instructors came down to look for housing, and they both turned down the positions. And we now do not have a program at COA in Dare County because they just couldn't afford to move here. The Outer Banks Hospital has told us that they have professional staff positions they have not been able to backfill. They find people, they hire them, people come down to look for housing and withdraw their applications for the job. They actually did a study of why birth rates at the hospital are down. They're seeing significantly fewer live births than they have in past years. And they were concerned that maybe it's a quality of care issue. For some reason, people are going to Chesapeake or Elizabeth City or Greenville to have babies. But once they concluded their study, they determined that the real problem was a demographic one. The 18 to 30-year-old primary age-bearing population was getting older. The 20-somethings were becoming 30s, and the 30-somethings were becoming 40s, but nobody was coming back and filling in those 20-something slots that used to be here. It used to be kids went off to college and came back and worked here, or people moved here when they were adults and out of school. We're just not seeing that happening in anywhere the numbers it has in the past. The actual population of childbearing aged women on the Outer Banks has significantly declined. Dare County is on our commission, and they have told us that they actually have professional positions that they've been having trouble filling. So, you know, we're hearing it across the board. We all saw it last summer in restaurants. A number of restaurants on the Outer Banks either closed certain days. A couple of them closed altogether because of an inability to have enough staff to keep the restaurants open. And we also all saw the result of now you've got the owners and the existing employees all working ridiculous shifts trying to keep it open. So the quality of service declined over the course of the summer, the patience of the people, the health of the people involved. It was probably one of the worst we've seen in terms of the impact on the restaurant industry. Who needs housing? Everyone. We're hearing it across the board. There's not enough housing for teachers, for our professional staffs in government. College graduates come here and can't find a place to live. Retail and restaurant, we've talked about, contract labor. It's throughout the community. It's not a single sector problem, and therefore won't be a single sector solution. Our intent with this coalition is to try and put together a group of stakeholders who can first really define the needs. So let's be a little comprehensive here and try and look at what types of housing we need, what kind of price points, what kind of facilities, and what kind of numbers that are not being met in the market today. And then let's also bring the resources to the table to start coming up with creative new ideas to address that. So we think business needs to come to the table, developers need to come to the table, and government needs to come to the table, so that we can all try and find a way of addressing this more comprehensively than we have been able to so far in the past. Again, how are we being affected? Listed on this slide are a number of the issues that were listed on our survey respondents as to how they are being impacted. Owner fatigue, lack of development of opportunities. We've had some interested businesses who would like to relocate here until they discover the difficulties they're going to face in getting appropriate staffing. We've seen the impact on customer service as there is a shortage of workforce. And really what our survey showed is that a shortage of housing leads to a shortage of workforce, a shortage of workforce leads to a decline in services, the quality of services, and the revenue that we can generate on the Outer Banks. So now that we've described the problem as we see it, where do we think we need to go from here? I think we need to, as we said, we think this needs to be a community-wide collaboration. I think there are a couple of steps that are critical. We need to learn from the work that's been done here in the past. This is not a new issue to the Outer Banks. It may be newly critical in terms of the level of agony we're experiencing from it, but it's certainly not something that the Outer Banks hasn't been struggling with for a long time. Efforts have been made in the past with some successes and some problems. I think the first thing we need to do is learn from what's already been done here. There's a lot we can learn from other communities too. We're certainly not unique in facing this issue. Karen Brown is very involved in a group of Chamber of Commerce presidents from around the country who specifically work in resort communities, and resort communities tend to have these issues to a level that non-resort communities don't. There are communities throughout the country that have faced the question of how do you get sustainable housing where the workforce is near the jobs, is near the grocery stores, is near the what have you, and make it work. I think there's a lot we can learn from all of those, so we're hoping as a start to get some assistance in kind of surveying what are the best in breed options out there for us to consider. I think the second thing we need is to realize that changing needs of the community are going to require changing approaches on all of our part to address them. So I think we need to kind of all have open eyes to look at new options that may not be things that we had considered in the past. We do want to talk about multifamily housing. Again, the chamber doesn't own this issue, nor do we own the solution, nor do we want to dictate the solution. But it certainly is the feeling of all our business community, at least, that multifamily housing is probably something we need to look at in a new way than how we have viewed it in the past. I think to preserve the character of the Outer Banks, this hasn't been something that we've put a lot of effort into in the past. But there are examples where this has been done across the country with lots of benefits beyond just providing housing. And many of them are listed on this slide. There are a number of advantages in terms of sustainability of the whole community when you isolate people less and can bring where they work closer to where they shop, closer to where they go to school, and their services are provided. So the reason we are here speaking to you today is what we would like from the town of Kill Devil Hills and all the other governmental entities on the Outer Banks is to join us in making sustainable housing a real priority for 2018, to participate with us in this effort, both in terms of your professional staff and board members. I mean, frankly, a whole lot of expertise resides in these rooms. You have the planning staffs with the knowledge of the issues, knowledge of the potential zoning density, whatever questions might come up, and the knowledge of what's going on in other communities along those lines. And then you have your board members, which are certainly extremely knowledgeable about what's important to the citizenship as a whole of the Outer Banks, and keeping this in perspective with all the other needs. So we'd like to ask you that you participate with us both at the professional level and the board member level. Work with us to find community approaches without getting bogged down by political boundaries. We really need this to be an Outer Banks solution. I don't think we can afford to make this a Nags Head solution and a Kill Devil Hill solution and a Kitty Hawk solution, which don't take each other into account. So with that, I'd like to thank you for your time, and we look forward to working with you on what we consider a very important issue. Also, in the back of your package and on everybody's seats are a little flyer. This was information we were given by the North Carolina Housing Coalition. I think it's inaccurate, but I think its inaccuracy means it just understates the problem considerably. It kind of shows average annual salaries and housing costing in various communities, and they did this one for Dare County. It shows that the average renter in Dare County can afford a rent of $500 a month. They seem to think that our average rent for a modest two-bedroom apartment is $883. If they know where the stock of those is, I would like to know. But when you imagine what it really is, which is probably something well in excess of twice that, obviously the discrepancy between what some of our workforce can afford and what's available is pretty dramatic. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank
you very much.
Any questions? Karen, I guess as far as following up, I turned my microphone off, sorry. As far as following up on the ask, is that something you'll get, like, send invitations for a meeting, or how do we move that forward?
I send out the meeting notice. Our next meeting, oh my gosh, is in March. I think it's March 12th, but don't hold me to that. I think Debbie always gets that. I know John gets it because as a business manager, he is participating a little bit on that committee. But I can include you. I think I've put you on the list now
Okay.
after our conversation the other day.
Okay, great.
And then you all can decide who you want to participate. I can tell you that, just as an aside, Kitty Hawk's planner is coming. A few of the town managers come. Bobby Outen comes from the county. and Larry Lombardi from Curry Tuck. We are engaged with Curry Tuck as well, because it's a regional problem. They're having the same issue up there, so.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anything else for you, Bob? Okay, great. Right, next, we will move actually on to new business. We have one item under new business. And this is appointment to the planning board. Mike Lowat, good evening, he's here. His term expires in March for the planning board. He does desire to be reappointed. So, with that, we have one position.
I make a motion, we reappoint Mike to the planning board.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you for your service and continued service.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Thanks, Mike.
All right, we did add, if you see on the agenda, it's new this time, we added a spot for committee reports. And really, I thought, just as, spoke with the town manager, just as a tickler, if you have a committee report to share, like if something happened, feel free to. If your committee didn't meet, or there's nothing new to report, then obviously don't feel like you have to chime in. But if there is something to share, by all means, this would be a time to do it. Does anyone have a committee update that they would like to share?
And if I may, Mayor,
Please,
and if you do have something in the future that you would like to actually have in the packet, or you'd like some help with getting something for the packet, Michael or Mary, just let them know and we'll see that it gets on there. I know a lot of times the timing just doesn't work, but you know, please let us know if we can help with that.
Sounds great. I know we just met 12 days ago and did committee updates, so it's likely that, you know, but since they do meet on different schedules, we'll just have it on here, we can comment.
These committee reports are strictly town-based committees, or can they be broader than that?
For the agenda, I was thinking town-based committees. If there's other things that you're involved in, then probably under your commissioner agenda would be great. Yeah. Yep, good clarification. Which, we'll move right on into commissioner's agenda. Commissioner Gray, anything this evening?
The only thing I had was, wanted to remind everybody of the 26th and, going to Raleigh, for the, oil and offshore drilling hearing. We'll be traveling, I know a couple of us have, booked on the bus and we're gonna take a ride to Raleigh. And, should be very interesting and a chance to, voice our opposition to that. That's the only thing I have, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner?
To add to that, I want to say if anybody here is interested in coming with those other board members to Raleigh on the bus, I believe tickets are still available. And the surf riders are organizing that, and it's a good way to kind of meet like-minded people in our community that work together on a common goal. I want to thank everybody who attended the Saving Lives Task Force Town Hall last week at First Light High School. It really was an informative, fun event. I enjoyed it. What I really thought was neat, we got to hear from the state epidemiologist. We got to hear from a law enforcement community. We got to hear from our religious community and the health department. So you had this real diverse group of presenters, all bringing their kind of angle to the substance abuse issues in Dare County. And I thank you, Mayor, for being there, and everybody else is there. I sure appreciate that, and I hope that we can get, you know, expand participation in the Saving Lives Task Force events in the future. I have one question I want to pose to staff and the board. I mentioned this a little earlier. I talked to Pastor Frank from the Source Church after the event concluded about their syringe exchange program. And they've had a lot of success helping clean up kind of the used syringes and issues about like that in Mandia. And they're looking for creative ways to expand up in the Kill Devil Hills. And one idea he asked me about was, is there any opportunities in Kill Devil Hills to install kind of like a secured sharps container, something that would be metal, welded to a wall, to a floor that can be busted into for people to come and safely dispose of used syringes. It doesn't even have to be for drug use, it could be for other maintenance medication issues. And I just wanna kind of ask the board, what you guys think of that as a potential idea as town staff, if it has potential, it may not be possible to do it. I know we have our container to dispose of prescription drugs here on site, and so I think maybe we could eventually add a sharps container secured to that, but I wanted to kind of talk to staff, talk to the town, and see if that's even a possible idea.
It's interesting, the Southern City magazine that just came out for the January-February edition has an article, I haven't even had a chance to read it yet, but there's an article in there speaking to the opioid crisis, and because it's affecting so many of the communities, not just in North Carolina, but across the country. And I look forward to reading that to see some of the approaches that other towns are taking. And I know this is a newer concept of putting out these sharps disposals containers in communities, trying to combat the issue of needles being found on the streets and whatnot. So I think it's worth looking into and doing some research to see of the communities that have started installing them, where are the locations? I'm curious to learn what's working with that, because I think you do have to probably be pretty selective of where you put it if you're gonna have a return. What works really well with these drug drop-off boxes is people are looking to try to get rid of these prescription or over-the-counter medications because they don't wanna keep them in their house for a safety factor, and so coming to a police department feels like a safe place to dispose of your medication. I'm not sure how our illegal drug users would feel the same, but I do think because the syringe program is working so well in the community, even though there was a lot of apprehension about that at first, that there likely could be really valuable places, or smart places to put them. I just don't know what they are. So I think we should look into it for sure.
Yeah,
Do
I
some
should have worded that a
research.
little differently. Don't have to feel like you need to answer immediately. Just start a conversation, look into it, see if there's any potential there.
And I would be curious to hear from the Saving Lives Task Force, because this is a newer concept too, if your task force, or if y'all have some ideas too, if you learn what's working too. So I think it's a great discussion to have, for sure. So,
I agree.
I agree, and I think there's a couple of different aspects to look at, the legal aspect and then the safety aspect.
One more quick thing, I did respond and accept the invitation to tour the new Publix on the 27th. Does the board feel it would be an appropriate time for maybe to talk to their leadership staff about paper bags and the plastic bag, and we kind of adopted as a board during that walk? I don't want to speak for the board without everybody being aware of it and comfortable me doing so, because I'm also on the Parents Committee, and I kind of wear two hats here, and I don't want to speak for the town without everybody being aware and comfortable with that. Are you guys comfortable having a little conversation with their managers about, hey, we have this history about using plastic bags in our stores, and we really, pro paper and pro recycling. Are you guys comfortable with that?
absolutely.
I'm comfortable with that.
And that's all I have.
I'll be there too, so we can gang up on you.
Yeah.
I went to Harris Teeter the other day, and I just got like two things, I think, and I was talking to the checkout person who wasn't paying attention. Next thing I know, I was walking out with a plastic bag. Man, I hope nobody sees me.
Yeah, that's great. Okay. Thank you. Disregard?
Nothing for me.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I have Michael was kind enough to ask him today if he would queue up the report from the tourism board meeting from last month. And we're going to show it right now. It's less than 3 minutes long. Please bear with us, if you don't mind. Very informative.
Hi there, Lee Nettles with your Tourism Board meeting recap from the January 25th meeting. Since this was the first meeting of 2018, we welcomed new board members. We seated 5 new board members this year and reinstated 3. We also elected officers for the 2018 year. If you're interested in seeing a list of the board members or the officers, please go to outerbanks.org. Go to the bottom of the page, look for the About Us link, and then click on the Board of Directors. Let's take a look at the November figures for occupancy and meals collections. On the occupancy side, we saw a big growth in November, up 18%. For the year to date, we are up 6%. On the meals side, we saw a decrease of a little less than 1%, but for the year to date, we're still up 6%. One of the main topics at the January meeting was the prospects of oil and gas leases being opened up off the Atlantic coast. As you know, this threatens our existence, our culture, our way of life on the Outer Banks. The Tourism Board once again reaffirmed its vehement opposition to offshore oil and natural gas exploration. The economy, the jobs that we see from tourism today meet or exceed the mid-level and low projections for oil and gas 19 years from now. When we look at trend lines that are based on real experience for tourism, what we find is 19 years from now, tourism is comparable with even the highest level projections for oil and gas. Why would we threaten a $1.1 billion local tourism economy and over 13,000 jobs, chasing an industry that may or may not materialize and definitely threatens our way of life? Lastly, just want to remind everybody about the Hatteras Island Oyster Roast that's happening. The Coastal Federation's putting that on with some assistance from the Visitors Bureau. Happening February 3rd at Odin's Dock in Hatteras Village. Make sure you get on down there. As always, we invite you to an upcoming Tourism Board meeting. The next one's scheduled for Thursday, February 15th, 9 o'clock at the Roanoke Island Welcome Center. Hope to see you there. Take care.
I'd also like to add that all members of the Tourism Board are required to serve on at least 2 subcommittees. And for this year, I've been assigned to 3 of them actually, on the steering committee, and I've been reassigned to the grants committee. And I've also been made chairman of the personnel committee. And whenever those meetings take place, if there's anything pertinent to report, I'll bring it back to you. That's all I have.
Thank you. Thanks for sharing that video too. It's a great way to capture what's happening. Great. Okay, we will move to Mayor's agenda. I have 2 items. They're in your packet this evening. The first is the proclamation for March 2018, Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Month. This proclamation calls for increased awareness about multiple sclerosis as a neurological disease of the central nervous system, which affects millions of people worldwide. So I would like to make a motion that we adopt this proclamation for March 2018 as Multiple Sclerosis Awareness Month.
I'll second.
Any comments, discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, the second is a resolution expressing the Kittewa Hills Board of Commissioners' continued opposition to offshore drilling and seismic testing. Obviously, I don't need to go into a lot of detail with this, but it's an opportunity for our board to have an updated resolution now with all of the current board members. We have a nice long track record of opposition. I think this will be nice to have in hand, the updated copy, not only on the trip to Raleigh, but I think I shared our last meeting, that I'll be in DC on Thursday of this week meeting with the FOAM director. So I'd like to be able to hand deliver an off the press copy as well. So with that, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt this resolution expressing our opposition to offshore drilling and seismic testing. Any discussion? All those in favor, please signal by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you so much.
It's interesting, as you say in your report here, that this has been going on for 30 years. The first time that we not us, but the town expressed their opposition to that was over 30 years ago. We're still doing it.
And it seems like we're having to do it more and more frequently now as well, which is really disheartening. But fight continues, right? And it's getting stronger and stronger. I do think we're gonna have a really nice turnout on the Monday, the 26th.
I think so.
It's gonna be strong, so, and I believe it's what, $10 to ride the bus?
Yes.
So not cost prohibitive. Okay, with that, we'll move on to town manager's agenda.
Thank you.
Town attorney's agenda,
That's for me, Mayor.
the consent agenda.
Yes, ma'am. 3 items on the consent agenda this evening. The first, the minutes from the January 31st, 2018 Board of Commissioners meeting. The second, Wells Fargo Security Safekeeping Agreement. The approval of the consent agenda will record the updated agreement with Wells Fargo Security as the town's third-party custodian and safekeeping agent. And lastly, the December 2017 monthly reports. This is from each of the departments, just some general information about the activities that went on in those departments, in all of our departments for that month. And then there's some additional information in here from the finance department that just kind of gives you an update on where we were with the budget in December, as well as a dashboard, a financial dashboard. Just some interesting information, and certainly if you have any questions, please let us know. The department heads can address it, or Sean or myself. Thank you. And so we recommend approval of the consent agenda this evening as presented.
Okay, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Any discussion? I'll just add one comment. Commissioner Gray at the last meeting mentioned a couple of things in response to a citizen's email. The citizen's here tonight. But anyway, and this is actually one of the ways to include what's happening within some of our town departments. So it's, I like it because it's a compilation of what the town's already been doing and just now becomes probably an easier format. We've been getting this in packets, but now as part of our monthly consent agenda, it might make it a little bit easier for the public to put their hands around it. So thank you for bringing it up, and Town Manager, thank you for the idea of putting it in this format. So, with that, we have a motion and a second. All in favor of approving the consent agenda, so we're saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, great, thank you. All right, well, we are back around to public comment again. Yes, Colleen, welcome. Welcome back from your vacation.
Thank you. 5 minutes later till dinner, sorry. First I want to say thank you so much for your awesome reviews. It's exactly what I was looking for, and I didn't even know that the tourism department did that little recap, so I really appreciate seeing that. And if I'm not mistaken, Sheila Davies, Mayor of Kill Devil Hills, I think you were the first one to do that. Dare County does it now, some of the other towns do it now, so thank you, commissioners, for spearheading the drive for transparency and open communication. It's good that we all are on the same foot and know that, we're doing good things. I know that Commissioner Winley talked a little bit about talking to the public folks about their plastic bags. I've already reached out to them and they're like, we like people to have a choice, so you two go get them, let them know what we want. I wanted to ask you today, we had our public forum at the end of October, so it's been about 3 months. I know that this board walked away with some action items and things that they wanted to look into, and I was wondering if somebody could give me an update on where we are. Thanks.
We'll take all of if there's more public comment, then I'll address Colleen's question. So, is there anyone else that would like to speak at public comment? Former Commissioner Midget, thank you for being with us again this evening. Nice to see your smiley face. Anyone else want to comment? Colleen, I can do a brief update. I know you guys were traveling at our last meeting when Sue was here and spoke about Sue Kelly, the Community Appearance Commission, and she gave an update. And you also chimed in about the trash attack reminder. But she and I met in, I don't know when we met, but and talked about those suggestions that came from the public forum that really surrounded all about the plastic bag ban repeal. And she then took that to the Community Appearance Committee, I want to say at their January meeting, and they agreed that they were going to take on that as they have 2 areas of focus, I guess, for this year, and that is one of them. So they're all of those ideas were given to them, and as a committee, they're gonna kick around what makes the most sense, for the committee to move forward. So, there's a nice home now to rest that initiative, and it sounded like they were, that committee welcomed doing that. Did I leave anything out on that? And with Trash Attack, do you remember the date again?
April 21st.
April 21st, so I'll do another plug for Trash Attack coming up. Great. Anything else this evening from any of the board members? All right, we will make, I guess, take a motion to adjourn. Does anyone want to adjourn? I'll take it. Okay.
Second.
You're just having too much fun here tonight. All right, we have motion second. All in favor, please signal saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Great. All right, thank you so much. Have a good evening.